Hello, I'm Dell with Healing Frequencies Music, and I am here to go over a little bit more information about the ancient solfeggial frequencies. I frequently get asked lots of questions about them and are they accurate? Uh, did we destroy pitch and all these crazy things and tuning? Have things become messed up over the years? And so I hope that I can answer that question through this lovely presentation that I'm going to do, keeping it short, I hope. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. Whoops, share screen. We are going to share only this. So here we go with this presentation. I'm going to get my slideshow started from the beginning. Is it going to let me do it? There we go. I always like to draw the curtain back on this wonderful little show. So it's called the ancient solfeggial frequencies. Are they frequencies of healing? And as I said before, my name is Del Hungerford. I do have a doctoral degree in music, so I understand a lot of the musical tidbits of everything to do with music theory, music history. It's not that I didn't have enough of it in school, that I shouldn't be able to explain some things that might be out there in internet land. My website is healingfrequenciesmusic.com, and we will move on to the presentation. Okay, what are the ancient solfeggial frequencies? Okay, there's a difference between the regular solfeggial scale and what some now call the ancient solfeggial frequencies. Just letting you know that what the standard scale that we're using and what some people call the ancient solfeggial frequencies are not the same. I'll show that as we go through this. The song, doe, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop of golden sun, sing along now, from the Sound of Music demonstrates the solfeggial scale that was first introduced by Guido of Arezzo, let me say that correctly, in 1000 AD, somewhere around that time period. The ancient solfeggial scale has specific frequencies that I think the lowest one is 174. Then it's 396, 417, 528, 639, 741, et cetera, et cetera. And they were first introduced by Joseph Puleo, who is a naturopathic physician in the 1970s. And he co-authored the book, Healing Codes for the Biological Apocalypse with Leonard Horowitz. And those frequencies they don't line up with the standard solfeggial scale that we know today. The frequencies rediscovered by Puleo are not the same frequencies as Guido's scale and do not fit within natural harmonic laws. And you're probably thinking, what are natural harmonic laws? Well, natural harmonic laws are based on ratios. This is everything within the cosmos, the earth, and everything functions on harmonic laws. And you're going to see that this top, where my little arrow is here, this top wavelength, that is the fundamental or the main note. So if I sing la, that note is this. Now, all of these other notes are in that as well. They're just different strengths, and every voice is going to be slightly different. So 1/2, this is going to be an octave higher than this. This is a perfect fifth higher than this. This is a perfect fourth. So everything is divided into equal ratios. You see 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, and then all the notes of our scale have natural ratios. So this is what harmonic laws are all based on, some form of ratios. So the laws of music, the harmonic series. So each note of a musical scale is a fundamental frequency that includes other pitches in the order established by natural laws. And I'll go through more of this. And this was first written about by Pythagoras. Now, a lot of people say he discovered it. Well, no, he didn't. He was really the first person who wrote about it and figured it out mathematically. Not that they weren't using it previous to that time. No one had just really thought about it. So everything in nature is based on harmonics. The series, the harmonic series on the right, is based on the note C. You're going to notice that this C down here is in the bass clef. And as you go, so this is the fundamental frequency. All of these notes are in this C, but as you will notice, they're going to come in as sympathetic vibrations that provide timbre for each note. Timbre is the quality of how a note sounds. That's how you know the difference between a clarinet, a trumpet, my voice, your voice. You recognize sounds by the timbre. I mean, my voice doesn't sound anything like a chainsaw. It's because the fundamental and the harmonics in the chainsaw are different than the ones from my voice. Some instruments use all the harmonics, and other instruments like the clarinet only use the odd harmonics. So we call this a voice print. So every instrument or voice has a specific voice print that's unique. And you're finding that a lot of companies will use a voice activated pin or code that you can use to enter someplace, because no two voices are the same. They're going to have different harmonics that are present in that voice. Okay, so now we go and look at our regular keyboard, which it had variations on this way back in the 1600s before they figured temperament out. And you notice all the white keys have their own name. All of the black keys have two names, because if you take C and raise it up, you get C sharp. But if you take D and you raise it down, lower it down, you get D flat. So C sharp and D flat are the same note. In music, we call those enharmonics. They have the same sound, but they're written differently. It's like the word two cats, too many horses. I went to the mall. All of those twos have the same sound, but they have different context and they're spelled differently. So you're going to use these flat keys. Some will be C sharp. Sometimes you're going to call it D flat, depending on the key signature and the context of that particular note. So that's a bonus adding there. Okay, so moving on now to temperament. Adjust the distance between each note. So when you're messing with the temperament, you're changing the distance between the various notes. Then once you've decided on a temperament, then you tune. So tuning adjusts the entire scale that you've just set a temperament to a chosen concert pitch. So that means you're going to tune all of the notes on your keyboard to A432 or A440 or A444. That A means that the A above middle C is going to be 432 cycles per second, or 440 cycles per second, or 444 cycles per second. That's all that means. So you have to choose a temperament before you can tune, because the temperament adjusts the individual notes. So I'm going to show you some examples of some temperaments. If you're going to notice here, equal temperament, the distance between every note is exactly the same. That's why they call it equal temperament. By the way, this wasn't invented until the 1800s, which we're going to get into later. Here's an example of Kernberger temperament. So all those lines, that's showing that those are perfect ratios. So B to F sharp, that's a perfect, that's right, that's a perfect fifth. So they're showing all of the perfect fifths are in tune. But, the further you get to all those flat keys over here on this left side, those are going to be more out of tune. Even though the distance between is exactly the same, this down here has changed it so that these notes, the perfect fifths, are going to be perfectly in tune. Then you go to Rameau temperament and notice it's even wonkier. You've got these notes, the perfect fifths, are in tune, but the rest of them, it's the sharps and flats. That's why in the Baroque period they wrote with very few sharps and flats, because once you start getting into these keys, craziness happens. Now, this last one is equal temperament versus just intonation. Just intonation is using the natural harmonics, which is what the original solfeggio scale is based on. And here they say the equal temperament would be like the numbers on a clock. So numbers 1 through 12 are the notes that are divided equally in the scale. You're going to notice that once you start going up, they're slightly different, but they're still really close. So this means the distance between C to G is slightly lower in just intonation than it is in equal temperament. And then you go all the way around, and once you get to the sharps and flats, notice a sharp is going to be on one side and a flat is going to be on the other. Now, they originally had keyboards in the 1600s that had split F sharp, one key for G, F sharp, one key for G flat, because tuning can be really tricky. Fretted instruments like guitar, they have to play an equal temperament. But before they had frets, you could adjust by simply moving your finger up and down the fingerboard, like violins and cellos and the basses and violas. They all can adjust. They can play it in just intonation all they want, because they can move their finger to make it play in just intonation. The reason we have these temperaments is because of keyboard instruments, which we're going to get into in a minute. So let's take a look at the difference in the ratios between equal temperament and just. The just here, this is like the minor second. This is a half step. And, this is the just thing. We had cheesy songs that we used to remember all these intervals. But you're going to notice that the minor second is slightly closer in just than it is equal. And in the major second is slightly closer. It's not as far away. So the distance in the major second in equal temperament is slightly wider. This is slightly narrow. Where you're going to see the biggest difference is in the major third. It doesn't seem like it is, but it's got this 5-to-4 ratio. Look at all of these ratios. These are perfect ratios, other than your tritone or diminished fifth or augmented fourth. That's kind of funky. But these are all pretty standard ratios, and you're going to notice that they're all slightly different. For example, if you see your minor seventh in your just scale, it is wider than the minor seventh in the equal tempered scale. So this is the unison to the octave. This is how the octave is split up. And then for each octave, they just tune. Once they've got one octave tune on a keyboard, they're going to go tune all the other octaves just like they did this one octave to just, if you want to just intonation. But realize that if you're tuning to just intonation, anything beyond 2 flats or 2 sharps is going to sound kind of interesting. So that's the reason we have equal temperament, because it allows us to play in all 12 keys. You use any other temperament, you're going to have to stop and retune your instrument if you want to play anything in more than 2 or 3 sharps or flats. That's just the way music is kind of strange. So, oh well, that's just the natural laws of music. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, here we go. So where did solfeggio itself originate? So for example, there's really 2 different definitions. There's solfeggio itself, as invented by Guido of Arezzo in around 1000 AD. And then there's the ancient solfeggial frequencies, which didn't come around until the 1970s. So solfeggio taught the monks how to sight sing. Sight singing is where I can pick up a piece of sheet music, never having seen it, and using solfege, I can sight sing the music. And we used to do an ear training in college. We would practice our solfege. So for example, I can sing so mi, do, 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 so mi, do, 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 re, mi, fa, so, la, so, fa, mi, re, do, so mi, do, 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 do. then I would tell a student, okay, write that out in the key of D, or write it out in the key of E flat. And they would know exactly how to do it, because they know where the solfege pitches are. But what solfege did is it helped the monks learn plain chant rather quickly. And the solfege scale is based on the natural laws of harmonics, which is just intonation. So just natural ratio scale was used for vocals and still is. Vocalists don't realize it. Good vocalists will adjust to the just intonation scale unless they're playing with the keyboard instrument, because keyboards can only play in equal temperament. So instrumental music is what changed everything. Once we got keyboard instruments, then you had to do something to make it so that keyboards could play in more than 2 or 3 keys. So here, let's take a look at the tuning and temperament timeline. In 1000 AD, Guido of Arezzo invents the solfege to assist the monks in learning plain chant. Then you have 1454, and I put this here specifically because you'll see why here in a minute. This is the first Bible that was printed with chapter and verse. I did not realize that before they printed the Bible, it did not come with chapter and verse. So we don't see that until 1454, which is about 500 years after Guido. Then in the 1500s, we start to see the rise in instrumental music, mostly guitars, lutes, those kinds of instruments. The 1600s, in the Baroque era, late Renaissance, you start seeing keyboard players, and they would tune everything by ear, because at that time, there was no way, we didn't have a way of measuring specific frequencies. So there's as many temperaments as there are musicians at that time. And we have tuning forks to show how people tune. So historically, we know this did occur. And everyone had a preference of what they wanted to do and how they wanted to tune their instruments. That's one of the reasons why concerts were so long way back in the Baroque era, because they would do all the tunes that were in like 1 or sharp or 1 flat first, and then if they had anything with 3 sharps or 4 sharps, they would have to stop the entire concert, give them a break, retune all the instruments so that you could play in 3 or 4 sharps before they could continue the concert. Enter the Industrial Revolution in 1800s. Then we have this dude named Helmholtz Hertz, who came up with the device that we can measure exact frequencies. This was the birth of equal temperament. Now let's look at Joseph Puleo's solfeggial frequencies. He had a vision from God showing him verses from the Bible hid a secret code. It was in the book of Numbers. He said this code includes healing frequencies. He said, we're no longer using the scale created by the ancients. Well, if you're a singer, you probably are using it. He said that the scale of Guido of Arezzo originally invented is the correct scale that we've strayed away from. No, we haven't. Oh, wait, I was going to get into that in a minute. Guido said we have received these frequencies from Scripture. He was said to have received these frequencies from Scripture. Now, if you go back to what I said earlier, well, let's look at the facts. Guido did invent the solfeggial scale, which we still use today with minor adjustments. Guido of Arezzo died, I said over 500 years, but it was slightly less, prior to the printing of the Bible, where they for the first time included chapter and verse. How could he get this secret frequencies using his solfeggial scale when the book of Numbers didn't have chapter and verse? So that's my first question. Just intonation is based on natural harmonics. So we still sing. If you're not singing with an instrument, chances are, if you're a good musician, you're going to use just intonation. Singers tend to use just intonation. Instrumentalists tuned instruments by ear until the 1800s, when we could measure specific hertz. Well temperament, that's what they called it before, led to equal temperament during the Industrial Revolution. So all of these things, Puleo was sent as what has messed up our tuning. Not, if you look at history, music history, things morphed. Composers started creating more difficult music that's strayed away from your basic chord progressions that you're going to see in most rock and pop music now. They wanted to use more sophisticated keys and transitions from keys. You couldn't do it unless you had equal temperament. And if you did do it using just or Verkler or Kernberger or any of the others that I showed you earlier, it would have sounded terrible. Okay, now let's take a look at the solfeggial frequencies. So on the left here, I show the actual pitch and the frequency. So we've got a G sharp. This 4 means it's the 4th octave above the lowest C in the piano. So these are half a step apart. Then you go up a major third to the C above middle C. Then you go up another major third to the E above its 3rd space. So this is 4th space E. Then 741 hertz is 5th line F sharp or G flat, if you want to call it G flat. And so this is the next octave. Then A5 is a minor third higher than this F sharp, and this is a major second higher than this A. So this spans a little more than an octave. But you're going to notice that it's not a scale. G, G sharp, C, E, F sharp, A, B. And if you look at these, so here's 432 concert pitch, here's 436, here's 440, here's 444, and this is all equal temperament. Just intonation would be slightly higher or lower than these frequencies. So 396 fits best in 440 hertz in that 444 concert pitch. The 417 hertz fits best in a 440 concert pitch. The 528 is almost exact in the A444. The 639 is close. It's slightly low, 627 hertz. So it's going to be, you're going to hear the difference. And it's really a D sharp here. It's not an E. Because once you get up to this high of concert pitch, so this is a minor third instead of a major third there. Then this F sharp, which is 741 hertz, it's closer to a 440 concert pitch. Then these last two, 852 is really going to be in the is going to be an A432 concert pitch. This F sharp to A is going to be extremely flat. It's almost going to feel like, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Hold on. I didn't mean to do that yet. Then we go to the 963. That again is going to be an A432 concert pitch. So there's no one concert pitch that these fit in. If you want to use these frequencies, you're going to have to tune to each one of them. And I do have a blog post where I talk about that. Now let's go to this one. This shows you on a keyboard exactly where those frequencies lie. So you've got the first one is this G above middle C, which is 2nd line G, to the G sharp, which is you just sharp it, or 2nd space A that's flatted. Then you go up to 3rd space C, 4th space E, 5th line F sharp, ledger line A, and ledger line B. And as you can tell, that is not a scale and does not fit within the natural laws of harmonics. It doesn't have natural, there's no natural ratios involved in this at all. And the hymn to St. John the Baptist was composed by Guido of Arezzo to help the monks learn to sight read. And I watched some guy, I won't mention his name, on a YouTube video point to this and say, see, these solfeggio frequencies are in this hymn. Well, no, they're not, because here's ut, re, mi, fa, so, la. I can't sing that high right now. And then T is missing. They added the T later. But this is, and I'm probably singing it pretty close to just intonation because I don't have an instrument backing me up. So now it's do, re, mi, fa, so, la. Yeah, laugh with me, please, when I squeak on that note. So this song was to help the monks learn solfege. Now we move on to frequencies of healing. Intent is really super important. It doesn't matter what the music is. If your intent is for it to be healing, then it's going to be healing. If you want a frequency to be healing, put your intent toward that outcome. We spent a lot of time talking about that at the Holistic Wellness Weekend this summer of 2023. And if you haven't purchased that, we're going to have a sale on it here pretty soon. So I'll let you know if you sign up for the newsletter when that sale will happen, so you can get all the recordings for a pretty decent price. Our beings, our spirit, our soul, and our body are all different. Therefore, no two people will be alike and will prefer different music. So a frequency that's going to work for me may not necessarily work for you. Your liver is not the same size as my liver. Your heart is not the same size as my heart. So what they say this frequency is going to be healing, you don't know. It's like the woman who shatters the glass. She has to match the resonant frequency of that glass in order to break it. So that's why frequencies are going to vary depending on the person. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it will work for everyone. So keep that in mind. You're going to know what healing music works for you based on what feels good while you're listening to it. Does it feel right? If you find that the pitches Joseph Puleo found as healing tones, that they work for you, use them. Just know that the history that they're talking about is not accurate. So consider that even though the history behind these frequencies is not accurate or is inaccurate, that shouldn't matter. It doesn't mean that they're not useful. If they're useful for you, use them. There is no historical evidence to show we've lost our original tuning, nor has there been any corruption of musical tuning or temperament. I can safely say that as someone who has a doctoral degree in music, who has studied music my entire life, and I understand music history and I understand music theory. If you are getting any information that says that music has been destroyed, that we're out of tune, that we've done all this stuff, none of that is true, because most of the people that are saying that stuff do not understand music theory. They do not have a music theory background. If you don't read sheet music and don't understand music theory, you can be a great musician, but if you don't read music, you're not necessarily going to understand those things. I'm not going to go into that more here, but just understand, we have not corrupted music. What we've corrupted is our intent. So let's get our intent line back up. Okay, so visit Healing Frequencies Music to learn more. The website, healingfrequenciesmusic.com. There's a link to it below. I have lots of blog posts on frequency-related topics. Sign up for the newsletter if you want all the geeky stuff. I have a Song of the Month subscription. There's a place to get some healing music if you want some. I give sound baths using crystal bowls. You choose your bowls, I create the sound bath. Personal songs are written specifically for you. And there's a lot more. We just did a holistic healing weekend in August of 2023. We've got a lot more events like this coming up. So if you are interested in what we are putting out that is frequency related, sign up for the newsletter, get on the mailing list, go in, check on the website, and continue looking for things on the YouTube channel. And I'm going to stop sharing now because that was the end of the presentation. So feel free to comment below on this video, and I would like to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much, and we will see you in the next one.